When the Bulletin invited me to come and participate in a debate with Campbell Newman, frankly I jumped at the chance. I did that for two reasons. Firstly, I actually think it is time for some of these big election events like debates between the leaders to come into regional Queensland. I also did it because I think that Townsville and the North Queensland area is one of the great powerhouse regions that is driving Queensland. And I think it is important that leaders come and face the music, come and talk to people direct, and come and outline some of their big ideas. As you know, my opponent said no to that invitation. Can I say that I think that smacks of the worst kind of arrogance. More and more I think Campbell Newman is behaving like someone who thinks that the election is a mere inconvenience and he has in fact already won it. Can I say I don't think that that's the case, and I'll be fighting for every single vote. But I'll be also happy today, in his absence, to outline what I think are the LNP's failings and some of the LNP policy proposals that I think you should know about. When I look at what's happened around this city and this region, I think it's been a very important decade, and I acknowledge that for that period of time there have been three very strong local champions here in Townsville. And what that has given Townsville is a loud voice in government. And you see the evidence of it everywhere. Whether you're walking down that magnificent Strand, whether you're shopping in the Flinders Street Mall, which is no longer a mall, I should call it the Flinders Main Street, whether you're enjoying time with your family at an event out at the Riverwalk in Thuringowa, whether you go outside here and look out to the port and see the development of a whole new marine precinct and the emergence of the new cruise terminal, whether you're driving across the Port Access Road, whether you're looking at the plans for the new railway line out to the port that'll take those trains out of town, or the ring road, looking at the new schools, the new buildings in some of the schools, the kindergartens that are taking shape in so many suburbs of the city. Whether you're marvelling at the growth of the great James Cook University, or looking at the future that it has joining with the new hospital, including a $500 million redevelopment of that hospital that will see the Douglas Knowledge Precinct emerge as a real intellectual and knowledge powerhouse around this local economy. Whether you're here at that time of year when it gets very noisy on the streets and you see thousands of people come into Townsville for the V8 race, whether you're visiting the museum and you happen to look up above you and see a giant redback spider, everywhere you can see the actions of a Labor government delivering to a fast-growing city. Delivering not just randomly, but in a very strategic way. And I do acknowledge the partnership that government has had with TEL. I think when Lachlan says it has a reputation for getting its hands dirty, what he means is that it's very skilled at twisting the arms of government at all levels. And it has that skill because it comes with a united single voice about what is good for Townsville. And that means government can be confident that its investments are strategic. That is, that they are investments in redevelopments or upgrades or new infrastructure that will drive prosperity. And that's what we've seen here in this part of the world over an important period of time. I believe, and I've said many times, that Townsville is the second capital of Queensland. We need to be thinking about Townsville now and how we want it to be in 10, 20 and 30 years' time. We have a dedicated state development area there because we see this as a major industrial city that's not only driving Queensland's economy but is one of the economic powerhouses of the nation. But we want it to be a livable city. We want it to be a city with a diverse economy, and that's why we made the investments that we have in so many parts of the region. There's more to come. You know about the Townsville Futures Plan that we've been working on, looking at those areas that will turbocharge Townsville for the future. We're very close to finalising that, and I look forward to you seeing it in the next few weeks. Can I just say, in relation to this election, it's no secret it's going to be a very tough fight for me. It's going to be a very tough fight for Labor. But make no mistake, Townsville and North Queensland will be one of the central battlegrounds, and I intend to be here very, very often. I am not going to let this city slip through our fingers. I'm not going to walk away from not only our achievements, but the big vision that we have for this city going into the next decade. So every single vote will matter. My members, my candidates, myself, we're all going to be here working very, very hard to make sure that people understand what's at stake and what's at risk if they move away from a party that has dedicated itself to growing this city, making it a great place to live and a city with a very strong future.
Premier, the polls and the commentators, they've got Labor really on a hiding to nothing for the upcoming election on the 24th. We've had the Queensland health payroll debacle, the Tahitian Prince, as he's become known, and now the last few days, those overwhelming revelations that are coming from the management of the Ivanhoe Dam during the flood crisis last year. Given all those things stacking up on top of each other, how do you think you can, or your government can, dig itself out of the hole it now finds itself in by March 24th?
Well, thank you, John. I don't walk away from the fact that this is a very tough fight. It's the toughest fight we've had for a long time. But what I know about the Labor Party is we do our best work when our backs are against the wall. We know that there's a lot at stake and we're not going to walk away from that fight. What the campaign will do is give people from across Queensland a chance that I don't think they've had yet to really scrutinise Campbell Newman and the LNP and consider what it is that they might be offering. Campbell Newman might be someone who's been the mayor in Brisbane for some time, but he's I don't think, not very well known outside of Brisbane. And he's someone who, the party has obviously decided, the LNP, to adopt a very small target strategy. He's not here today. He doesn't want to face the scrutiny of the people of North Queensland. You're not the only group that he's said no to. Talk to the media, he can go 4, 5, 6 days before fronting a press conference. But you can't do that in a campaign. Every single day of the campaign, people will have an opportunity to make a judgment about whether this person is up to the job. I've said very publicly, I don't believe that he is. I know him well. I don't believe he's fit for the office of Premier, and I don't think he's up to the job. My job is to make sure that when people go into that ballot box on the 24th of March, they know Campbell Newman a lot better than they do now, and they've got a lot more questions about him than they have now. On some of the other issues, I think we should be very careful before we jump to any conclusions about the Commission of Inquiry. Right now we have a lot of allegations and a lot of claims, but we have an inquiry that is yet to reach any conclusions. I've said from the beginning, all I want out of this Commission of Inquiry is the truth. I'm not frightened of that truth. I think people are entitled to it, not just so they understand what happened last year, but just as importantly, if not more, is if this happens again, that the dam will be managed in the most appropriate way.
Do you see similarities between what's happening down there with the dam and what happened to the Bjelke-Petersen government with the instigation of the Fitzgerald inquiry? I mean, you've triggered this dam inquiry at your own very great risk.
Look, no, I don't. What was at stake in the Fitzgerald inquiry was the corruption of democracy. And, that's a very different issue, I think, than how a dam was managed in a disaster. This is really a question, technically, of whether it was correctly managed, and there's been no findings or conclusions on that matter yet. As I said, lots of claims and counterclaims, and they're all quite sensational. But until we have, this is a properly empowered commission, they have the capability to reach, I think, the right conclusions, and until they do that, I'm going to be very cautious about jumping to those conclusions. But are commissions of inquiries risky for governments? Absolutely, John. But you can't sit in the office of Premier and you can't sit in government and walk away from those really tough questions. What happened was an unprecedented disaster, and I owe it to the people of Queensland to make sure that we have all the answers that we can, not only about the dam, but what happened in Toowoomba and whether we could have given people more warning, what do we need with the Bureau of Meteorology in future. These are big questions and I'm not going to walk away from them.
Premier, if you do pull off an election win, what do you see as being the big projects, the major projects, the drivers, if you like, the economic drivers that would carry Townsville and carry North Queensland through to, well into the first quarter of this century? I know, speaking of something you've been involved with just recently, west of here was that water initiative out at Richmond, which could pave the way to more agricultural expansion along that Flinders River area. But are there other big things that you can think of, and probably not do with mining? Can we just steer away from mining for a while?
Well, I do think mining is going to be, very central to what happens here. But you're absolutely right. It won't be, by a long shot, the only thing that will happen in this region. When I think about Townsville, I don't just think about the city of Townsville, I think about the region that stretches from Mount Isa through that whole northwest region down to the city of Townsville and then the surrounding areas like Burdekin and Dalrymple and Hinchinbrook to the north. And right at the heart of that, obviously, is this incredible, growing, thriving city. And one of the reasons it's growing and thriving is because it's so well placed on a port with an incredible capability. So how do we make sure that we grab all of that potential? If you look at the Townsville Futures Plan that I instigated as a result of coming here and governing Queensland from Townsville about 18 months ago, there's some great work there about what I call turbochargers. Townsville will continue to grow if people do nothing, I think. But that's not what I think government is about. Government is about getting in there and looking at the levers and pulling them in the most strategic way possible so you can accelerate the opportunities. So what are those turbochargers? Some of them are at a state level. How do we accelerate the development of the state development area so that we can see more industry and particularly manufacturing industry? Some of that I think will be related to mining, but much of it will also be around marine industries and other manufacturing opportunities right next to a port. There is substantial growth opportunity there. And what we know is happening in the northwest around the Northwest Minerals Province is an incredible growth, and we need to make sure that we can get all of that through the port while keeping this city livable. And that's that railway bypass that I think will really change the face of not only the city, but the way that product gets to the port. Look at agriculture. We've been out in the Richmond area working with farmers. There's been people here will have heard about the big irrigation schemes around the Gilbert. They've been around as ideas for a long time. In the last 2 to 3 years, we've done an enormous amount of work with the agricultural scientists and the farmers in that region. We've developed an irrigation plan, which the government's now funding the first trials of, to create a whole new food bowl for Queensland. We're the only state in Australia. Everyone else is looking at potential decline in their agricultural industries. Here in Queensland, we have an opportunity to grow a whole new food bowl. It's actually a really unique project, and it's here on your back doorstep. But I think a couple of other things that are unique, or not unique, but very special about your economy that we need to keep investing in. Firstly, you have an outstanding world-class university here. And the work of that university has for a long time defined much about this city and this region. It has, I think, untapped potential in a whole range of areas, particularly in that area around biofuel. The whole world is looking at cleaner forms of fuel. You are uniquely placed on the back, the doorstep of, great cane growing areas, etc. And I think that's a very big area of potential. And then, of course, the defence. This is a defence town. And we know, looking at the most recent white paper, and the Queensland government pushed very hard for a stronger presence in North and Far North Queensland, and certainly the indicators are that that's going to continue to happen. Put all of that together and you've got a very powerful mix. Tourism, of course, with the new cruise terminal, I think will go from strength to strength.
Okay. Premier, the old favourite, the Bruce Highway. It's past its use by date for most sections between, say, Mackay and Cairns, for example, which is where a lot of us drive. There has been some band-aid work over recent years and over the last 5 years, quite a bit of work in smaller sections. But still the road's dangerous, it's narrow in places. I'll give you an example. There's a bridge south of here across the Horton River, between here and Ayr. It's a fairly narrow 2-lane bridge. It's on the Bruce Highway. It's a long drop down to the river. There's crocodiles in that river too. It's deep water, and there's no guardrails on the bridge. And passing a B-double on it is a white-knuckle driving experience. Could you give us an indication, we're assuming Labor's going to be in power for another couple of terms, that those sort of death-trap bridges like the Horton will be taken out and replaced, and that major attention will be given to the Bruce Highway?
Very happy to talk about the Bruce Highway, John. I think the only person who's happier is Craig Wallace, who's made it one of his personal passions. And I congratulate Craig. I think having someone from this part of Queensland as the Main Roads Minister has certainly seen a lot of action happen around that. Look, firstly, let me say, you all know it's National Highway, and any of you who have ever had a chance to travel on national highways in other states, particularly states like Victoria, they're unrecognisable compared to the National Highway that we've endured in Queensland for a long time. I think, frankly, that we have been neglected by successive federal governments and, frankly, in the past, of all political persuasions. I do think we need to give some credit to the current Labor government in Canberra. Some of the work you talk about in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen more money spent on the Bruce in the last 4 years than I think we've seen in the last 2 decades before that. So, full credit, I think, to a lot of the work that's happened from local businesses, but also the state government here has pushed very hard to get that work happening. But let me talk about the Bruce for a minute. We identified the Bruce as one of the great arterial roads of our state. It not only moves people around, it moves product and freight, and it's absolutely the lifeblood of our state. That's why we have worked over the last 2 years. We now have a plan for the Bruce Highway. It outlines 10 bypasses and a major duplication all along the major routes, including improvement of bridges and replacements in a number of cases. That plan has not just been plucked out of the air. We sat down and we came out to towns like this. We have worked with industry, we've worked at different levels of government with the councils in each area, and we've identified a 10-year, 20-year plan for the Bruce Highway. I go back to what you need to know about Campbell Newman, I suppose. He came bursting out of the gates last year. He came flying into Townsville, he came into Mackay, he came into Cairns and said that one of his priorities would be to fix the Bruce Highway. In fact, he challenged me to a debate in Townsville. Here I am and he's not here, so that was an interesting challenge. But he then subsequently, after saying that the Bruce would be his priority, that he would have a plan to fix the Bruce Highway, he then conceded about 2 months later, and I don't think it's got the coverage it deserves, that his plan would be to have a Bruce Highway plan 6 months after he's elected. I don't think that's good enough. I think the people of Townsville and Mackay and Cairns and other regions are entitled to know, what is your plan for the Bruce? Now, clearly, having a plan is the first step. It doesn't make it built, but you can't build it without a plan. We know that the big road projects all around Australia, including Queensland, when the federal government comes out with project money, you need projects that are shovel ready. You need the plans done, and we are in that position for the first time ever. We have put state money on the table on a number of the upgrades that are happening now, which, I do it because I think it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't sit well with me that National Highway continues to see that sort of attitude out of Canberra. So we've got a Canberra government, a government in Canberra that's listening in a way that I don't think anyone's listened in the past. We've got a plan that sees the duplication and the bypassing of a number of areas in a way that has never happened before, and it's a Labor plan. What the LNP has is rhetoric. They have no plan, no clue, and they won't come and talk to you about it.
Premier, the 2009 sale of state assets, they were seen at the time as a fire sale of the Queensland's family jewels, and a sellout of Labor, a lot of Labor workers, people who worked in railways and worked at the ports. But it was a bold move, but it did create a lot of division within the Labor Party. If you could go back to 2009, would you do it again?
I wouldn't have done it in 2009 if I had choices, or choices that I thought could be made. The only choice that we could have made was to cancel major infrastructure projects. We either had to decide to keep building and buying new assets, like the hospital, like the ring road, like the bridge, like the relocation of the maritime precinct, and thousands of projects like it right across Queensland. It's easy now, I think, to sit back and say, oh, that was all really difficult, but we need to remember it was in the middle of the worst financial crisis that the world had seen since the Depression, and it hit us very, very hard. Our economy was flying high, and the higher you are, the harder you fall when something like that happens. We had to take some tough decisions. I could either cancel buying the new things that we were buying with our building program, or we could decide to sell some of our assets to keep buying those new ones. I went to the election promising that while it was unclear at that stage what might need to be done to manage our economy in those tough circumstances, the one thing that I would prioritise was jobs. You know, the ratings agencies would have been quite happy for me to cancel the building program because they don't care about people on dole queues. I look at the United Kingdom, I look at the USA, where you've still got many, many parts of those countries with double-digit unemployment. Here in Australia, the way we managed to get through that I think is a credit to our banking system, to the way we run government, but it's also a credit to governments like ours that were prepared to take some tough decisions. I can tell you that was the most difficult political decision I've ever had to make, because
Premier,
it did make it so hard for the Labor Party.
From AAA to AA plus. When can we expect to go back into a AAA credit rating?
I'll come to that in 1 minute. I just finish on the decisions around assets. I think the fact that I was prepared to do that in such difficult circumstances, and it was always going to be politically difficult for me inside the Labor Party and in the electorate, is a demonstration that I will make the right decisions for Queensland, even if they're not the right political decisions for me. We could have taken what would have been the easy way out on that issue, but it would have left thousands of people on dole queues, and for me, that's not Labor values. Labor values prioritise giving people the dignity of work, and that's what we did, and I'm very proud of our program and the way we kept people in jobs. In terms of... I've lost that question, John. What was it?
Premier, we can move on to coal mining. We're running out of time. Coal mining
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to dodge it.
We've got about 5 miners wanting to move coal from the Alpha area to Abbott Point. Your good friend Clive Palmer, Waratah, and from Waratah, and Hancock Coal, Ardini, QR National. When you look at some of the maps now that are drawn, the coal lines, they look a bit like Barry Jones's famous old spaghetti chart. There's railway lines running everywhere. It's about 600 kilometre distance from Alpha to Abbott Point. There's no clear definition of where they're going to go, but there is talk of putting, say, 4 lines within a wide 100 metre, 60 metre corridor. Of course, there's a lot of landholders in the way. Can you give us any sort of guarantee today that those lines will be controlled and contained and won't be wandering around the landscape like Brown's cows?
Look, yes, I can, John. Obviously, we want to open up that mining opportunity, and we want to be able to get that coal to port effectively. But we don't want spaghetti railway lines crossing the landscape. What you're seeing at the moment is a number of proponents all looking at what is the best rail line. Ultimately, what we will see is one corridor with multiple lines in it, in my view. But what we're going through is, I think, important. It's a commercial process where the proponents themselves are looking at all of the options. Ultimately, there will be a commercial reality, and that commercial reality will drive someone to build it and other people to pay to use what's been built, because it just simply will not add up for everybody to be carrying the debt that will be required to build more lines than are necessary. So what you'll see, I think, is what you'll see is a lot of private sector argy-bargy, which we're seeing at the moment, and that's part, I think, of getting the most effective value for money outcome. And from our perspective, it has to be in the public interest. The public interest is best served by a single corridor, potentially more than one line in the corridor, and with the rights of landholders along that route being protected and compensated. They're entitled to that under law, and they will get that compensation. So those negotiations are happening, but this is a huge mining opportunity, and in my view, it will be realised. But in the meantime, we've got to make sure that you get the best and most cost-effective way.
But you do acknowledge there will have to be multiple railway lines to handle the volumes of coal?
Yes, that doesn't mean that there needs to be a single one for every single proponent. I think there will be some scope, at least in the first phases, for some sharing, for one company to own it and lease some part of it to others. Mm-hmm. They will all be required to have third-party access on their lines, so under the laws of under the competition rules. So there'll be a commercial reality. A company will decide, is it more effective for me to lease space on that line or put the money in to build my own? And it'll be a different decision for each company.
Okay. And Premier, if things don't pan out as you'd like on March 24, what's the future for Anna Bligh? Will she stay on as opposition leader? Will she be content to take a shadow role in an opposition government, or would she bow out of politics? You've been in there a while now, and have a go at the private sector.
John, I can honestly say that when you're preparing for the fight of your life, you don't start thinking about, contemplating loss. You go into it with aiming to do everything you can to win it. My view is if I don't get the outcome I want, I'll have plenty of time to think about those kind of questions, so I'll do it then.